You are not who you think you are, and that is not an insult. That is the most important truth anyone will ever tell you, because the person you believe yourself to be, the way you think, the way you react, the things you do automatically, none of that came from you. It was given to you, planted into you before you were old enough to question it, and right now, today, that planted version of you is running your entire life. Think about that for a moment. Every decision you make, every relationship you choose, every opportunity you avoid, every pattern that keeps repeating in your life, none of it is random, none of it is bad luck, none of it is just the way things are. It is all behavior, and behavior comes from one place only: the inside. Most people spend their whole lives trying to change the outside. They change their job, they change their city, they change their relationships, and then they are shocked when the same problems follow them, because the problems were never outside. The problems were never the job, the city, the person. The problem is the programming running silently beneath everything you do. And until that changes, nothing changes. Psychology tells us something very specific about human behavior. It tells us that the majority of what a person does every single day is not chosen. It is automatic. Scientists say that more than 90% of your daily actions come from your subconscious mind, not your thinking mind, not your logical mind, not the part of you reading these words right now, the part of you that operates beneath awareness, the part that was programmed long before you had any say. This is where it gets important, because if 90% of your behavior is automatic, then the real question is not, why do I keep doing this? The real question is, what is running the program? And the answer is your self-concept. The deep, often unconscious belief you hold about who you are, what you deserve, what you are capable of, what kind of life is meant for you. Your self-concept is not something you chose on purpose. It was formed, quietly, slowly, over years. It started when you were very young, before you could think critically, before you could filter what was being poured into you. Your parents spoke to you in a certain way, your teachers responded to you in a certain way. The world around you gave you certain signals, and your young mind did exactly what it was designed to do. It absorbed everything, no filter, no resistance, pure absorption, and from all of that experience, your mind built a story about you. This is who I am. This is what I am worth. This is what people like me do or do not get. And that story became your identity, not just a thought you have, an identity you live from. Here is what most people miss. The subconscious mind does not know the difference between a truth and a belief that was repeated enough times. If you were told repeatedly, even indirectly, that you are not smart enough, your subconscious accepted it as fact. If you watched people around you struggle with money your whole childhood, your subconscious learned that this is what life looks like. If love in your early environment was conditional, your subconscious built a model that says, you must earn love, you must perform for it, you must never fully trust it. These are not memories. These are programs, and programs run in the background constantly. You can feel them, even if you cannot name them. You feel them when you are about to do something good for yourself and something pulls you back. You feel them when someone offers you kindness and something inside you does not fully believe it. You feel them when you set a goal and a quiet inner voice says, "Who do you think you are?" That voice is not you. That voice is the program. And this is the tragedy of human behavior. Not that people are lazy, not that people do not want better lives, but that they are fighting against themselves without knowing it. They want one thing consciously and are wired for something else subconsciously. And the subconscious always wins, always. Think about a person who says they want success. They read about it. They think about it. They talk about it. But deep in their subconscious, there is a belief that says success is dangerous. That if they rise too high, people will leave them. That if they have too much, something will be taken away. That people like them do not really make it. So what does that person do? Without realizing it, they sabotage themselves right at the edge of success. They procrastinate, They make small but fatal mistakes. They walk away from opportunities that were right in front of them, and then they say, "I just have bad luck." But it was never luck. It was the program protecting what it believed to be safe. The subconscious mind is not your enemy. Understand that clearly. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is keeping you consistent with who it believes you are. That is its entire function. Consistency. If it believes you are someone who struggles, it will create the feelings and impulses that lead to struggle. If it believes you are someone who does not deserve love, it will create behaviors that push love away. Not because it wants to hurt you, because it is doing its job, keeping you matching your own self-image. This is why behavior change without identity change never lasts. This is why willpower alone always fails eventually. You can force yourself to act differently for a while. For a week, a month, maybe even a year. But if the self-concept underneath has not changed, the program pulls you back. Always back to what it knows. Always back to the version of you it was built to maintain. This is not hopeless. This is actually the most hopeful thing you will ever hear, because it means your behavior is not a character flaw. It means you are not broken. It means what you have been calling your personality, your habits, your nature, is actually just programming. And programming can change, not through force, not through punishment, not through 100 motivational quotes on your wall, but through something much deeper, through the slow, deliberate reprogramming of who you believe yourself to be. And that is where everything begins. Not with your actions, not with your habits, not with your goals, with your self-concept, with what you believe at the deepest level about who you are. Because here is the truth that psychology has been trying to tell us for 100 years. You do not behave according to reality. You behave according to your perception of yourself within that reality. Change the perception, and the behavior changes on its own. You have been trying to fix the fruit without changing the root. The fruit is your behavior. The root is your identity, and no matter how much you polish the outside, if the root stays the same fruit will grow. Every time, so the real work is not out there. It never was. The real work is in here. In the quiet, unseen beliefs that are shaping every single thing you do. In the story your subconscious has been telling about you since before you were old enough to disagree. That story is not final. It never was. But to change it, you first have to see it clearly. You first have to understand the forces that built it. The hidden, invisible forces that most people never examine for their entire lives. And that is exactly what we are going to go into next. There are forces inside you right now that you have never seen. You cannot see them. That is exactly what makes them powerful. They do not announce themselves. They do not ask for permission. They simply move through you, quietly shaping every thought, every feeling, every choice you make. And the frightening part is this. Most people live their entire lives completely unaware that these forces exist. Psychology calls them by many names: conditioning, core beliefs, schemas, inner models. But underneath all of those clinical words is one simple truth. You were taught how to see yourself, and the way you were taught to see yourself became the lens through which you see everything else. Think about two people standing in the same room, same opportunity in front of both of them, same circumstances, same moment in time. One person sees possibility, one person sees danger, one moves forward, one pulls back. Same room, same moment. Completely different experience. Why? Because they are not seeing the room. They are seeing themselves inside the room. And what they believe about themselves determines everything they perceive. This is the hidden force. Not the world outside, but the self-image inside. The deeply held, mostly unconscious picture you carry of who you are, what you are worth, what you are allowed to have. What happens to people like you? That inner picture was painted long ago, and here is the painful part. Most of it was painted by people who were themselves operating from their own unexamined programs. Your parents gave you what they were given. Your teachers reflected what they believed. The world around you mirrored the beliefs of everyone in it. You were not raised by perfect, fully conscious people. You were raised by human beings, and human beings pass down not just their love, but their fears, their limitations, their unspoken beliefs about what life is supposed to be. And you absorbed all of it. Before the age of 7, the human brain operates primarily in a state that is very similar to hypnosis. Theta brainwave state. Pure absorption. No critical filter. No resistance. Whatever goes in, goes deep. Whatever goes in, stays. So if you grew up watching someone you loved live in constant anxiety, your nervous system learned that the world is not safe. If you grew up in an environment where love was unpredictable, your subconscious learned that you cannot fully relax into connection. If you grew up hearing the words, "We cannot afford that," "Money does not grow on trees," "Who do you think you are?" Those words did not just disappear. They became architecture, the invisible structure that your entire adult life is being built upon. And now you are an adult. You are choosing freely, or so you believe. But your choices are not as free as they appear, because every choice passes through that architecture first. Every opportunity is filtered through what you believe is possible for you. Every relationship is shaped by what you believe you deserve. Every moment of potential growth is measured against the ceiling that was installed in you before you were old enough to refuse it. This is what psychology means when it talks about behavioral patterns. Not just habits, not just routines, deeply grooved pathways in the mind that activate automatically in response to life. You walk into a room full of successful people and something tightens in your chest. That tightening is not just nerves. That is your subconscious running a pattern. It is scanning the environment. It is comparing what it sees to what it believes about you, and if the gap feels too wide, it sends a signal. Retreat. Shrink. You do not belong here. You do not hear the signal as words. You feel it as discomfort, as the urge to check your phone, as suddenly wanting to leave, as the brilliant thing you were going to say disappearing right before you speak. This is the hidden force at work. This is behavior being controlled not by your conscious intention, but by your unconscious self-image. And nowhere is this more visible than in the phenomenon of self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is one of the most misunderstood things in human psychology. People think it means weakness. People think it means fear of success. People think it is something to be ashamed of. But self-sabotage is none of those things. Self-sabotage is loyalty. It is your subconscious being completely loyal to the version of you it was built to protect. When you are about to cross a threshold, when you are about to become something that is larger than what your self-concept believes you to be, the subconscious does not celebrate. It panics because expansion feels like a threat to its map. Its map says you are this person, and this person does not live that kind of life, so it pulls you back, not cruelly, not consciously, but with the precision of a system that has been doing this for years. It creates doubt right when you need certainty. It creates fatigue right when you need momentum. It creates conflict in your relationships right when things are starting to feel too good. It finds ways to return you to the familiar, because the familiar is what it knows. And what it knows feels like safety, even when the familiar is painful, even when the familiar is the very thing you say you want to escape. This is one of the deepest truths in all of psychology. Human beings will often choose familiar pain over unfamiliar peace, not because they are masochistic, not because they enjoy suffering, but because the subconscious mind equates familiarity with survival. What is known can be navigated. What is unknown is a threat, and so it keeps you in what it knows, even if what it knows is breaking you. Now add to this something else, the way your nervous system responds to other people. From very early in life, your brain built what psychologists call an attachment model, a template for how relationships work, what love feels like, what it asks of you, what it does to you. If early love was warm and consistent, your nervous system learned that people are safe, that connection is good, that you can trust. But if early love was inconsistent, if it came with conditions, if it disappeared without warning, if it required you to be smaller or quieter or more perfect, then your nervous system built a different model, One that says love is unpredictable. One that says you must earn closeness. One that says if you show too much of yourself, people will leave. And now, as an adult, you wonder why your relationships follow the same pattern, why you attract the same kind of person, why you feel the same way in different relationships with different people, why the specific fears you have seem to play out with almost mechanical precision. It is not bad luck. It is not the wrong people. It is your attachment model running in the background, creating the dynamic it expects, proving the belief it already holds. Because the subconscious mind has a need, a deep, almost desperate need. To be right, not happy, not free, not successful. Right. It would rather be right about a painful belief than wrong about something beautiful. If it believes you will be abandoned, it will unconsciously create situations that lead to abandonment, not to punish you, to confirm what it already knows, because confirmation feels like control, and control feels like survival. This is the psychology of human behavior at its deepest level. Not evil, not broken, not hopeless, but deeply, profoundly automatic. A system running exactly as it was designed, a system that has never been questioned, a system that has never been shown that there is another way, and that is the crucial point. The system can be shown another way. The architecture can be rebuilt, not through fighting the old patterns, not through shaming yourself for the behaviors you cannot seem to stop, but through something far more powerful, through a fundamental shift in the identity that all of these behaviors are built upon. Because when the identity changes, everything built on top of it changes with it. The behavior changes, the patterns change, the relationships change, the choices change. Not because you forced them to, but because they are now growing from a different root. A root that says something new about who you are, something true, something that was always true, even when everything around you was telling you otherwise. And learning how to make that shift, how to actually do it, not just understand it, but live it, that is what comes next. You have been waiting for something outside to change, a sign, a circumstance, a person, something that would finally make it easier to become who you know you are meant to be. But that moment is never coming, not because life is cruel, but because that is not how transformation works. The outside never moves first. It never has. It never will. The outside is always, always a reflection. A mirror held up to what is happening inside you, and you cannot change a reflection by reaching into the mirror. You change the reflection by changing what is standing in front of it. This is the shift that most people never make, not because they are not intelligent enough, not because they do not want it badly enough, but because no one ever told them that the work is internal, that the real transformation has nothing to do with the outside world, that it begins and ends with who you believe yourself to be. So let us talk about how identity actually changes, not the surface version, not the affirmations you repeat in the mirror while feeling nothing, not the vision board on your wall that your subconscious quietly dismisses every time you look at it. The real thing, the deep thing, the thing that actually rewires how you move through the world. It begins with awareness, not judgment. Awareness, there is a difference. Judgment says, I keep doing this and I hate myself for it. Awareness says, I keep doing this and I want to understand why. One creates shame, one creates change. When you can look at your own patterns with curiosity instead of contempt, something opens up. You begin to see the behavior for what it is. Not a character flaw, not evidence that you are broken, but a response. A learned, automatic response to a set of beliefs that were installed before you had a choice. And what was learned can be unlearned. What was installed can be replaced. But here is what the replacement requires. It requires you to stop identifying with the program. Most people think the program is them. They think the fear is them. They think the doubt is them. They think the self-sabotage is them. So when they try to change, they are trying to change themselves, and that feels terrifying because you cannot fight yourself and win. But when you understand that the program is not you, that it was placed in you, that it is running through you but it is not the truth of you, everything changes. You stop fighting, and you start observing. Neville Goddard understood this more deeply than almost anyone who has ever spoken about the human mind. He said that your outer world is simply a projection of your inner assumptions, not your hopes, not your wishes, your assumptions. The things you have accepted as true about yourself and about life. An assumption is not a thought you have occasionally. An assumption is a thought you have stopped questioning. It has gone so deep that it no longer feels like a belief. It feels like reality. When someone assumes they are unlucky, they do not think, "I believe I am unlucky." They think, "I am unlucky." That is just the truth, but it is not truth. It is an assumption so old, so repeated, so unexamined, that it has solidified into something that feels permanent, and it is producing a life that matches it perfectly. This is the psychology of human behavior at its most precise. Your life is not happening to you. Your life is happening from you, from the assumptions you are carrying, from the identity you are living inside of, from the story your subconscious has accepted as fact. So the question becomes, how do you change the assumption? How do you go into the deep interior and shift what has been there for decades? You begin by choosing a new state, not a new goal, a new state. There is a difference between wanting something and being the version of you who already has it. Wanting keeps it at a distance. Being collapses the distance entirely. When you decide, not hope, not wish, but decide that you are already the person you want to become, something in your nervous system begins to shift. The subconscious does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are convinced you are. Feed it a new conviction, give it a new identity to protect, and it will begin doing for the new identity exactly what it did for the old one. It will make your behavior match. It will make your choices match. It will make your perception match. This is not fantasy. This is psychology. This is how the mind has always worked. The only difference is now you are using it intentionally instead of being used by it unconsciously. But this requires something most people are not willing to do. It requires you to hold the new identity before the evidence appears, before the results show up, before anyone around you can see the change. You have to be willing to know something about yourself that the outside world has not yet confirmed. This is where most people fall. They start to shift, they feel it, and then they look at their circumstances, and the circumstances say, nothing has changed, and they collapse back into the old story, because they were waiting for permission from the outside to believe something on the inside. But that is backwards. The inside always comes first. The conviction comes first. The identity comes first. And then slowly, then suddenly, the outside begins to rearrange itself to match what has already changed within. Think about the people in your life who seem to move through the world differently. Not the loudest ones, not the most aggressive ones, the ones who carry a quiet certainty, the ones who do not need to convince anyone of their worth, the ones who seem to attract what they need without desperate reaching. They are not luckier than you. They are not smarter than you. They are simply living from a different assumption, a deep, settled, unshakable assumption that says, I belong here. That says good things are natural for me. That says, I do not need to force life. I simply need to be who I am, and life responds to that. Life always responds to that. And here is what you must understand about the psychology of change. It is not a one-day event. It is not a single moment of decision that transforms everything overnight. It is a practice. A daily, quiet, deliberate practice of returning to the new identity. Every time the old pattern rises, and it will rise, you do not fight it. You do not shame yourself for it. You simply notice it, and you return. You return to what you have decided is true about you, again, and again, and again. Because the subconscious learns through repetition, that is how the old patterns were built, through repeated experience, through repeated messages, through repeated feelings. And that is how the new patterns are built too. Not through force, through consistent, gentle, deliberate repetition of a new way of seeing yourself. Every morning you wake up and choose the identity before the day chooses it for you. Every time the old voice rises, you do not argue with it. You simply return to the truth you have decided to live from. Every night as you drift towards sleep, in that quiet space between waking and dreaming, you plant the new assumption into the fertile soil of the subconscious. This is how it was always meant to work. You are not trying to become someone new. You are uncovering who you actually are, beneath the conditioning, beneath the fear, beneath the programs that were placed in you by a world that was itself operating unconsciously. Beneath all of that, there is something that was never broken, something that was never actually limited, something that always knew, even in the darkest moments, that more was possible. That knowing is not a dream, it is a signal. It is the truest part of you pointing toward what is already yours. The psychology of human behavior is not a life sentence. It is a map, and now that you can see the map, you are no longer lost inside it. You know where the patterns came from. You know what has been running the program, and you know, with a certainty that nothing outside can shake, that you have always had the power to write a different program. Starting now. Starting here. Starting with the quiet, unshakable decision that who you have been until this moment is not who you are. It is only who you were taught to be, and you are done living someone else's lesson.